I have an off-topic thing to talk about, guys.
Shoot.
Because my brain just went there, which is I don't know how old you guys are. Well, I do know how old Wanted is, but I don't really know how old Ronin is. But back in the days, back in my times, before the internet existed and stuff like that, and before like instant messaging and all these kind of stuff, you know, I remember you had to like talk to girls and get rejected in person. But then like once the internet came, I don't know, is it only me, but it felt easier to talk to people compared to like doing it in person.
Well, definitely.
Uh,
Like
it's
even video
easier.
chatting is easier, kinda.
It's easier for two reasons. One, obviously, it's online, so disconnecting from said person is also easier. But rejection is easier. As you were talking about, you had to get rejected in person. Getting rejected online is easier because you've just got to read the text. You just don't have to feel the cold interaction of it's kind of the same thing. Just everything IRL is a lot different than not IRL, no matter whether it's through a webcam or through digital texting or pictures or video. It's never going to be the same. Watching a concert through a video is never going to be the same as actually being there. Even though you're hearing the same music, same thing, hearing it as loud as it is, even though it's fucking up your eardrums, it's all different than not doing it IRL. So like the rejection, hearing someone say the words to you, they could say the same exact sentence, but the tone, being able to hear tone and really know how they mean it, see their facial expressions, all that is a lot different than just reading the words and having a stock face to match it to, or a still face rather to match it to. It's a lot different, and it's easier to just. I've never even met you, and chances are I've just never seen you until I met you on Tinder. So chances are I'll still never see you IRL. So if I just block, unmatch, whatever, and act like this never happened, I can chances are I'll be able to avoid it for the rest of my life. Unless you have bad luck and ironically you meet that person in the mall middle next week, or the next day, ironically, which I have that kind of luck. So yes, it is possible, but typically you won't. So yeah, that's why it's so easy to talk to people. Is the rejection is easier to go through and disconnecting is easier. Again, not just on rejection, but like if person's weird, creepy, you can just block them, be done with it. In person, if a person's creepy, you've got to figure out how to get away from that person. If you're the kind of person that doesn't want to offend, even though they're the creepy ones. There's some people I know that are like that. They're just so nice. They don't want to offend anyone. Or
Mhm.
they don't want to say rude things, blah, blah, blah. You've got to figure out how to get away from the situation. Then you've got to make sure if you're like in this day and age, a female, you've got to make sure you get down the street and no one's following you. Then in your car, blah blah blah. And then that said person's probably still making sure they're not being followed. If that person also had a car, like it's at the grocery store, some kind of. There's a lot of things that come IRL with trying to get out of that situation and disconnecting from the person versus on a phone. So yeah, definitely a lot easier for like a lot of reasons. And that's the humans have a problem with attaching to things that are easy to do or make things lazier to do. So that's why we also have dug deeper into technology because it's easy. It makes things easier. Why would a guy, especially like a teenage boy, not date a girl through online and do online dating versus IRL dating when he can get rejected and then just blow it off and it not be in front of a bunch of people unless the messages are shown? That's another thing. You've rejected a person, it's probably in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah. But you know
All that
something?
ties.
I hate to keep sounding old, right? But I
No,
feel
you're good.
I feel like something is lost by that. Like, I get it that it's easier for especially for younger teens and stuff to not get rejected in public, but I
Yeah.
feel like that helps build character and like confidence and stuff like that. Like I know like me, I when I was trying to talk to girls and I got rejected and stuff like that, it just taught me like not to give up. It just taught me like to get thicker skin and stuff like that. Like even now, like people say I think this was a topic that you kind of wanted to talk about before, which was thick skin versus thin skin. People who like nowadays everything offends everyone, right? And I
Yeah.
think like in the past, people had thicker skin because they had more in-person interactions and you had to deal with a wide range of people and wide range of personalities in person. And so you had to develop like stand up for yourself kind of mentality. And nowadays it's like now everybody's anonymous and behind the screen, so you don't have to stand up for yourself. You can just block someone, you know. So
It's funny you mentioned this because it was actually a whole like TikTok topic I wanted to do one day, which was I do have topics, but the things like I say, it either pops up and I was like I'll do it now, or it's forgotten until someone brings it up, or I just don't care anymore. But one of them was on the whole thick skin, and then the cell phone thing or the media thing. Kids having to go to school through Zoom. I was talking to someone or whatever, just talking about how like that's really going to mess kids up because they're going to lose out on everything that makes people people in high school. For instance, those kids that talk too much shit and get away with slick shit, the keyboard warriors in school, they got to get their shit punched in and they got to learn that lesson. Or a bully who bullies people, it's like, yeah, the kid's not going to get bullied because the bully doesn't exist now. He's not in school. And I'm not saying we need to have bullies, but when there are bullies, those people learn through getting their shit beat or whatever it is. When, because a bully, the best way to beat them sometimes, I'm not saying they encourage violence. I'm just saying, if you fight a bully back, whether it's through whatever it is, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, is what I'm saying. And, it gets that bully, to learn, hey, okay, I'm not as tough as I thought I was. Or dating girls, like you said, talking to a girl in person, they don't handle rejection as like a kid today's age will not handle rejection as well as I can, because I've been rejected in person many times or whatever, or enough times for like me to have built that steel skin versus them. The first time they ever get rejected by a girl, they're going to piss themselves because that's never happened to them before. They're going to be so embarrassed because it's never, and it didn't happen to them until they were an adult because they went to school through Zoom for a good while or whatever. So they missed out on a lot of high proms, just all those things that you look back on that make your character today, that you think back on as lessons or good memories or whatever it is. All that stuff is going to be missed out on. And that just ties into what he was saying about just like technology. That's just one of those factors of being able to like block people and not have to like deal with the interaction. Those interactions are needed to build your character sometimes, whether it's this person learning not to run their mouth so much, or maybe that weaker person getting bullied needs, I'm not saying needs to get bullied, but he wasn't going to get stronger anywhere else. So that bullying will be the chapter that makes him stronger, and I'm not saying he needs it, but that's the thing that makes him, go to the gym or whatever it is, or, so while like it's, I don't know, I want to say it's like a circle of life thing. Like we don't need the bully and we don't need this person to be bullied, but they help each other. Like bully some makes him stronger. Then he gets stronger, beats bully's ass. Bully now becomes not bully. This guy now stands up for himself, and this guy's a lot nicer. PEMDAS. I don't know.
yeah, I know what you're trying to say. Like you're not trying to encourage bullying,
No, not at
but
all. Like not at all.
you're saying that
What we have is what we
it's a
got, and
part
I'm
of
just
life.
figuring out how it works and why it works.
Yeah, it's like a part of life, right? There's always gonna, not always, but it's very likely that often there's gonna be someone who's gonna be a bully and
Yeah, for
someone who's
multiple
gonna be the
reasons.
bully. And
Yep.
you have to learn to navigate that. Like that's just part of life. It's not
Yeah.
wanted or needed per se, but it's just something that you have to
I'm just
figure out.
navigating with the tools that we've been given. Like
Right.
bullies are naturally going to occur, so with that, we utilize it by making this person that be stronger, or something like that. I mean, this person could have been made stronger a lot of different other ways, but a lot of times in like public schools, city schools, that's how that's utilized. And then later, the bully becomes not the bully. We don't just have bullies roaming schools making people tougher. But
Yeah.
that's
Hiring bullies.
it's
Hey,
just
can
like
you go to this school and make these kids tough?
it's like a food chain, but in a evolution kind of way. Like instead of us eating, this person eats this and this person eats this person helps this person and that person does this for this person, blah blah blah. And it just, the different ways that we interact with each other evolve us as humans to become the adults we become, kind of deal. So that's why you need all the social interactions, or whatever it is, going to school, being in clubs, doing this, doing that. Being behind technology is going to destroy kids if like especially if they were like in Zoom class the whole time. They won't know how to deal with anything. Job interviews, dating, nothing. They'll have none of that.
One thing I want to add, taking away that interpersonal interaction is gonna caused something I think worse to happen because now back in the day when you want to date somebody, it would take you weeks or even months to build the courage to even speak to them in the first place. But now you could just scroll through as many as you want and just send the same message to every single person. Hi, how you doing?
Yeah.
Hi, how you doing? So it's like you lose that aspect of actually working for what you want. Even if you can get rejected, you still have to work there. But nowadays, it's just like send 10 girls the same message or response. That's the one. And that's not how you actually supposed to like pick somebody. But that's what we have now. And that's what taking away like classrooms going on Zoom, you can't actually talk to the girl that you want to talk to. You just talk to all the girls in the class and whoever responds to, that's who you
All at
talk to.
once.
Yeah, so it's like it
Yeah.
takes away that building up of courage that you need to do different things.
That was another thing. It takes away memories. It wasn't just like lessons, stuff like that. It takes away your memories of remember when we were in class and Scott Pilgrim did this. Like
Hmm.
it takes away, all of that stuff or interactions with teachers or any of the stuff. There's a lot of teachers that are like really responsible more than my own parents sometimes for like the person I am today or a trait that I have or a thing I remember or a thing I do or don't do. A
Hmm.
lot of teachers are responsible for that. And they don't even know. But yeah, so like there's just so much that like you'll miss out on just in school. We're just talking about school alone.
Yeah, I'm glad you
If
said that
you
too. Because you spend 8 hours in school, then you come home and you sleep, and then you go back to school. So that's where you spend most of your time anyway. So like
yeah,
nowadays, your parents have to be the ones that actually teach you the things that your teachers would have taught you, and they're
which
not
is
really
another
equipped to do that.
topic is a whole separate topic. I'm just gonna list it. That I wanted to maybe do a video on or something is that parents aren't so responsible for their kids as people say because they always say like badly behaved kid behaves bad at school blah blah blah. Well, it's probably the parents at home and this and that. And while yes true, but like I just said, all the stuff that I know, a lot of values male teachers taught me. My dad, how would he have had time? He's
Hmm.
at work, whatever. Sometimes my parents would not even be home when I got home, whatever. But even if they were home, I was with my teachers all day. They were raising me. And
Hmm.
so I've grown up hearing all the time that like, it's never the teacher, never the teacher. And I'm actually willing to say it's 60-40 and even maybe 70-30 on the teacher being more responsible in raising the kid during the school years, not obviously during the summer, but during the school years are actually more responsible in certain ways for how you're raised because they control how you behave and what you're allowed to do and not do all day and stuff like that. It's just the parents, I think, job to enforce you listen to that teacher when you go to school. They're like parent. It's like the cop. Like the cop is the judge until you get to court. They're your teacher or your parent until you get home. And but I've got to be able to trust. Like the cop, the judge needs to be able to trust the cop's judgment. I need to be able to trust the teacher's judgment before they get home. To trust that I can turn my back and you handle my kid like anybody else, just handing your kid over to any babysitter. They're
Hmm.
literally your babysitter and they influence what your kid does more than the parent does. So I don't know. I feel like that's a topic that no one's ready to talk about is that teachers are actually more responsible sometimes. Sometimes. That's why I said it's like 60-40. But that I got to thinking about that from thinking about how much you're in school and the social interactions and stuff. I ended up branching off and thinking about that.
Yeah, very very apt um, thing you just said there because that's something I never actually thought about. Uh, that's a topic I've never thought about, and I know like it's kind of like cliche where people are like, "Oh, it's the parents' fault that you don't have good
Mm-hmm.
manners or whatever." But yeah, that what you said makes sense. It is really teachers mostly because I a lot of my memories are of different things and teachers telling me or like I picked up from them and I'm like, this
Yeah.
makes sense to me, you know. But I want to go back and say something. I took some notes here. We're talking about bullying earlier, and it reminded me of a lot of comedian stories. Like a lot of comedians are like, "Well, I used to get bullied, but then like I was a funny guy, so people wouldn't pick on me." Or I used to like people would want to beat me up, but then I would crack a joke, and then they'll be like, all right, you good, you can leave, whatever." Like that's what that reminded me of. And then and then Wanted was talking about like on apps, people swiping right, and then just giving everyone the same like, "Hey, how you?" or whatever. And that made me think about like how the culture is now, like is like a hookup culture where people aren't really trying to like farm meaningful relationships. They're just trying to like get a nut and move on. And I don't know, like I'm not like religious or anything like, or I don't have a specific belief in whatever, but I feel like there is some credit here where it's like society is kind of morally falling apart because of stuff like this, where instead of getting actual meaningful bonds, we're just doing these like, I don't know what to call it, but like it's not as meaningful. And that could probably lead to a lot of problems later on down the road.
It's a chain reaction kind of thing. Basically, guy gets on Tinder and is looking for real love and or whatever it is, but he has a bad couple instances and he goes, man, these females ain't nothing out here. So then he decides, I'm just gonna get mine and at least make sure I get my nut off, blah blah blah. So then he does, and then girls realize and catch on, like, well, if this guy is gonna be doing that, then I'm gonna do it too, and I'm gonna, be all weary. And then it just goes back and forth, eye for an eye. And now we're in the system where everyone's the general standard is to look for a hookup and be lucky if you find a matchup instead of look for a matchup and be lucky if you find a hookup. Just a
Oh, the rabbit hole of
typical
this
thing
one.
we do. Trend becomes a lifestyle.
Yeah, that's sad.
We do it
Yeah,
all the
I
time.
would.
History repeats itself. I could go back and name like 10 other things that started as like a small trend that a couple people were doing or something like that and became a whole culture or something.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's something I often say is that history repeats itself. Like
Mhm.
anything that's happening now has happened already in some version, and we literally just have to study history. That's why I always felt like history is the most important topic to study, because you can learn how to avoid making the same mistakes. But I mean, it's not pushed in schools. Mostly science and math are pushed nowadays. So
That's a weird concept though. Can you learn and avoid your mistakes if history always repeats itself?
I
It,
feel like
maybe that's the paradox and what keeps you in it is trying to avoid the mistake. It's like
mm,
trying to go back in time to save and stop yourself from going back in time, but that's what started the loop. You trying to avoid the trouble is what makes history repeat itself. Like us trying to avoid wars and this and that for whatever reason starts the war, and then when we get finished and then something, then we do it over again.
so what I would say is like maybe not trying to stop the war or not have the war, but maybe change circumstances that led to the war, if that makes sense. So like instead of saying like, okay, we're gonna try to not go to war, and therefore what you do everything in your power to not go to war, but then everything you do basically makes the war start. I think what I'm imagining is like specifically like, okay, people doing this behavior causes war. So instead of trying to stop the war by preventing this behavior, you create a new behavior. So it's not like avoidance, it's more like implementing something different instead.
Um, to a certain extent, though, I think the whole thing with history repeats itself is like history repeats itself without us trying to, like whether we want to or not. So like when you try to do that new method or whatever it is, somehow, some way, we're gonna find out how to get in a war about that, and that's how we end up repeating ourselves. Even though we made a system specifically to not get in a war like that time, like we were presented with the same scenario, except this time we're like, all right, instead of going left and knowing that shit's gonna fuck us up, we're gonna go right and obviously head towards paradise. Somehow, even though we took the paradise road, it led us right back to war and repeated itself. Because, and I don't know how that, I can't make up a scenario right now. I could eventually, but just we'll find a way to mess it up and get in a war again somehow,
but
even on
that
Paradise
in
Road.
itself
Like
does explain it, because
weird,
you never
but
know what's gonna happen, that someone's gonna take the wrong way or whatever. But what I was
yeah,
gonna say is that history repeats itself, but it doesn't look the same, and I think that's the problem there. Like it's
that's
gonna be
why
there's
too.
gonna be a war about something being red, and then a war about something being blue. So like it's gonna repeat itself, yes, but then the reason why is always changing, and we have to
You
have
won't even
more.
see it coming
Yeah,
because
we need
it's a new
more
reason.
foresight instead of having hindsight. Go
Until
ahead,
the
Nina.
history starts repeating the history,
Mm-hmm.
that's when we'll be able to prevent the measures. When we get a war that's over oil again, we should know how to handle it, or at least what the outcome will be due to the
Mm-hmm.
fact we've done the war over oil before. But if the war is over emeralds, a war we've never exactly done before, then it's it's going to be brand new. It might be war, but it's a new topic, so we're not going to know how to fight that war, and we're going to do said method that won the oil war, and that's going to be the wrong move and get us deeper in the war because it's not the same. It's like a fire. It's not the same fire. You can't put water on this fire and this fire. That one's a grease fire.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna say that. Man, you keep beating me to the punch on everything. I was gonna
Oh,
say
why
that,
not?
like, basically, yeah, history repeats itself. But if it's the same thing that's happening, the exact same thing, I think that that is something where you can be like, okay, I knew, like, it's like learning from your experiences. Like, if I know in the past that I did this thing, I touched this hot stove and I got burned, well, guess what? I'm not gonna touch the hot stove. I might get burned from something else, but at least I'm not gonna get burned from the stove ever again. So, or not on purpose ever again. So I think that's kind of like how history is like if you've done it before, you can take from that past mistake or that past whatever it was and have a better outcome. And I think that's why the world is slowly progressing in a,
Uh,
in my opinion, positive way. But then, as you said, there's always going to be some new reason to do something that we've already done in the past, even though like before we didn't do it for that reason.
I don't think we're guaranteed that we're gonna repeat, like you said, you touch stove and then now it's a soldering iron. You're not gonna touch iron when someone tells you it's hot because you know what hot is or you can see it's red. You're not gonna repeat it because of similar history. And I think that is true for anything else. If we have similar history, we definitely have the option to fix it or recorrect, new history or new events so that we don't repeat history. But it's not surprising to me that we repeat history because it's not a new event, I guess, is the best way I can word it. I don't expect us to run into it or repeat history, but when we do, I'm never surprised because we've yet to repeat a history that was the same.
Yeah.
And to show example, for example, slavery never will happen again. Why? That's a history we've been through before. We learned the lesson. We know the method of what not to do when it comes to human rights, I guess. So that is something that we have done before. But like North Korea or some, I wouldn't call them slaves over there. But some people in other countries that have different ways of living or different government styles, such as America with democracy, might find that more a slave-like style to be under or a hive mind-like. Um, and they've never been through an America slavery age, so they don't know how that works or how the outcome of that goes, or probably haven't been through like a huge dictator phase as long as they've been through one kind of deal, so they don't know exactly how to navigate the situation. And the next time they have one, it'll be a different leader, but he does this with the country, and they don't know exactly how to navigate that. But they know he's a dictator, so they know they can and can't do this. But they haven't been through that before, so they haven't been through that exact way of dictatorship.
Yeah.
Wow. We went down the rabbit hole. I don't even know where that conversation started from, but that was really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, Wanted. Got anything else?
I was trying to throw it to you. 'Cause I was like, damn, like every guest is always something different and always so good. So I appreciate you being here 110%. You really,
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
you really do epitomize the rabbit hole mentality of just going wherever your mind takes you. Go ahead,
Told you,
Mina.
man.
Yeah. You're almost like the perfect guest for this
Yeah.
because of the fact that your mind just goes on a topic and then you just go down that road until you get to the end, or maybe it never gets to the end, but then you just keep going. And I think
I've
that's
never
that's
reached the
perfect.
end of a road
Yeah.
before, ever.